The motherfucking lands between. Before you kind people decide to string me up and eat me alive, I'll admit that my issue with this game is a side effect of a player base getting better at a genre of a game. But it's not a get good or skill issue type situation. I have beaten this game multiple times, normally all while doing very dumb unnecessary challenges. I'm gonna ask you one very important and specific question. What do you enjoy in a difficult boss fight? For me, it's anticipation and momentum. I'm gonna talk about momentum first, not because it's more important than anticipation, but because I can get some cool, relevant visuals to hold that viewer retention rate. We all love momentum. The most powerful, impactful moments in media usually contains a very simple but critical concept. Momentum equals power. It's something we all instinctively understand. It doesn't matter your weight, height, gender, race, or rank on Overwatch, we all visually can feel how powerful the impact of something will be, judging by its weight and momentum. It's actually a really complex equation that our brain will instantly figure out and recognize, and game developers have mastered animating it. Yes, most games have health bars to show damage, but I trust I don't need to show you any health bar to prove getting hit over the head by Shao Kahn's Wrath Hammer is gonna hurt. Now, anticipation is important because it tells your smooth little brain to get ready to calculate that oh so beautiful momentum. Winding up an attack or getting into a stance is really all anticipation is. Sadly, the actual momentum of the action tends to take the spotlight, but when you notice how important anticipation is, it really highlights how ugly some attacks are in this game. Hint, hint. So that's my favorite part of a difficult boss fight. When my two rules are combined, you have an exciting and intimidating fight that almost feels realistic no matter how unrealistic the fight actually is, because it uses our brain's natural understanding of momentum, making it feel like a coherent fight. Do you see what I see? I wonder if you see excitement, a thrill. Or do you see what I see? A fight so naturally unreactable that it doesn't feel like a duel anymore. A fight so incoherent that it rules out that almost realistic fight, no matter how unrealistic it actually is feeling. You might be able to tell how I'd enjoy playing these games. I hate learning. Remember, to each their own. But to me, learning a boss's moveset feels cheap, like a way out. A way to escape dueling an enemy. I prefer sharpening my brain's natural reflexes, gauging and calculating the enemy's attacks with anticipation and momentum. To many, these games are a test of endurance. How many times you can fail, learn something, and get back up in the fight without quitting. To me, these games are a test of reflex. How many times I can feel the attacks coming towards me and react accordingly. Never learning attack patterns, because if I start learning them, it feels like I'm giving up. Like my genuine skill isn't good enough. Like I couldn't win the duel and I had to resort to cheap tricks. And when that happens, I'm no longer immersed in the game. The win no longer feels earned. So like unironically, like exactly like this one meme. Elden Ring doesn't support the way I play the game like some of the older titles did. And it's because of what I said at the start of the video. My issues with this game is a side effect of a player base getting better at a genre of game. Now, I'm sorry if I piss you off, but I genuinely think that my way of playing the game is how you should balance your enemy's attacks off. But that comes with a trade. See, my way of playing the game means that some people like myself would have an easier time beating the bosses. But over the years, a thing I like to call difficulty creep has risen alongside the player base's skill. By that I mean with every installation of the funny rolling game, it must get harder or the games won't have that appealing challenge anymore because we, as a player base, have gotten better since the previous installment. With that being said, if you balance the game around my way of playing the game, I truly think the combat experience would be better but would overall become easier, something that Elden Ring clearly didn't want to do because Elden Ring went for an unfair and difficult challenge instead of an easier but more fun challenge. You can find proof of this all over the game. Check these guys out. Have you ever looked at their attacks? Besides having a bigger moveset than most Dark Souls 1 bosses, they're extremely fluid. Both their anticipation and momentum animations are well made, and same with this guy. And this guy. And also that guy. Hopefully you can tell what I'm getting at. They understand and have the skills to make the flow of combat realistic and smooth, but like I said, it's easier to win those fights so they don't dare apply those smooth realistic animations to the main bosses, because in their mind they have to be difficult. But when you boil all that information down, you get a pretty grim statement. They sacrificed quality for difficulty. And look, I get it. I would be the first person to raise their hand up and complain about this game. But Elden Ring has so many great qualities. Build variety, locations, weapon play, and visually both the enemies and bosses have great designs. Many of those things are not only good aspects of the game, but some are points that I think they do best out of all the press B to win games. But I simply can't sit down and enjoy a game that actively chooses to be less fun in my eyes just so it can call itself a hard game. And I truly hate to say this because I actually received Elden Ring as a gift from my friend for Christmas. But I don't think I've ever played a game where I felt so little achievement from beating a boss. And that's kinda this genre of game's whole thing. To me, beating an over-the-top difficult boss means nothing. So f***ing what if I can sit in my room for hours memorizing attacks until I win? It's unengaging. Here's the difference between a boss like Artorias and most Elden Ring bosses. I got stuck on Artorias for many hours, like many Elden Ring bosses. But every time I died to Artorias, my game plan never changed. I didn't have to sit and study his attacks. His moves felt realistic. I would die and the only thing I would think of was, just play better. It was all on my reflexes. The attacks weren't confusing or hard to judge. It was simply my fault. I would have to sharpen my reflexes to win, and I did. In that moment when I finally won, it felt like an accomplishment, like I was truly, wholeheartedly a better fighter than him, and I just don't get that feeling in Elden Ring. After defeating a boss, it feels like a drag, mentally preparing for the next confusing, over-the-top boss fight. After every death from Artorias, and every run back, I would genuinely think that the next attempt could be the one, even if it did in reality take many tries afterwards. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. I'm going to ask you another very important and specific question. In Elden Ring, when you die to a main boss, would you get angry at the boss or yourself? Because for me, it was almost always the boss. Oh, except for Horolo, I love that guy. But first, Malekith. Fighting him is like studying for a test, and I ain't a nerd. Alright, if you want me to describe Malekith in a game term, I would call him gimmicky, and I say that because he's a boss that's borderline impossible to beat without knowing the tricks to beating him. And I know that's kind of a wild statement to make, so I'll give examples. When he does this animation, roll back or jump. When he does this animation, mash the roll button because he'll always do a follow-up swing. When he does this animation, jump over the attack. When he does this animation, get close to him. When he does this animation, roll within 44 frames of him landing because there isn't a clear sign to tell you when the weapon will explode, you just kinda have to learn. When he does this animation, roll behind him or you'll get hit if you roll in any other direction. When he does this animation, expect a follow-up that defies all momentum. And when you learn all those things, Malekith goes from one of the hardest bosses to one of the easiest bosses, and then you get to pat yourself on the back for cracking the code and finding the answers to his attacks. His entire concept, his entire gimmick, is just learning. And then you got my boy Horolo, who looks you dead in the eyes, lays all his cards out on the table, then says all you gotta do is dodge my attacks. No gimmick shit. Horolo's a masterclass in animation. Not only does he have anticipation and momentum, but he also has follow-through. His attacks are clear as day. This fucking guy is 13 feet tall and wields a great axe the size of a person and yet feels realistic. If you struggle against him, it's because he has no tricks to abuse. He's not impossibly fast or has hard attacks that are difficult to follow. He's just wholeheartedly and truly a better fighter. I mean, this guy embarrasses Malekith, where Malekith would randomly do an attack that explodes with no telling animation. Horolo digs his foot into the axe, telling you to roll, followed up by him straining his arms to pull the axe out of the ground, telling you to roll, Then his second phase increases his aggression, and I love it. People struggle on that second phase, but it's all a mental game. He still has great anticipation and realistic attacks, but want to know the gimmick to beating phase 2? It's just calming down. Don't be intimidated by him. Simply trust your instincts. Forget all that ugly this game has thrown at you so far. He respects your natural human reflexes, and you should too.
They've tarnished thy